Have you ever wondered what it feels like to stand so close to the sky that the stars seem within reach? Tibet is not just a place on a map. It is an experience that rewires something deep inside you. And today, we are going to take you there without you needing a single plane ticket. Buckle up, because what you are about to discover is going to completely change the way you think about life, culture, and what it means to be human. Let me start with something that will genuinely blow your mind. Tibet sits on the highest plateau on planet Earth, averaging over 4,000 meters above sea level. That is so high that the air contains roughly 40% less oxygen than what you are breathing right now. And yet, millions of people call this place home. They do not just survive here. They thrive. They laugh. They pray. They cook. They fall in love. And they build communities that have lasted for thousands of years. How is that even possible? The answer is one of the most extraordinary stories in all of human biology and history. The Tibetan people carry a gene variant that no other population on Earth has quite like they do. Scientists have traced this genetic adaptation to ancient humans called the Denisovans, a mysterious group related to Neanderthals who lived tens of thousands of years ago. This gene helps regulate how the body processes oxygen, allowing Tibetans to function at altitudes that would leave most outsiders gasping and dizzy within hours. Think about that. The people of Tibet are literally carrying ancient human DNA that makes them superhuman in the eyes of modern science. This is not mythology. This is genetics. And it is just the beginning of what makes this land so extraordinary. Now let us talk about what Tibet actually looks like, because no photograph has ever fully done it justice. Picture endless grasslands that stretch so far you start to question whether the horizon even exists. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, the Himalayas rise up like a wall built by gods. Mount Everest, the tallest peak on Earth, stands right on Tibet's border with Nepal, but locals here call it Chomolungma, which translates roughly as Goddess Mother of the World. That name tells you everything about how Tibetan people relate to nature. It is not something to be conquered. It is something to be revered. Here is something that most travel documentaries completely miss. The lakes of Tibet are among the most stunning bodies of water anywhere on this planet. Namtso Lake sits at over 4,700 meters above sea level, making it one of the highest saltwater lakes in the world. The water is this almost unreal shade of turquoise blue that shifts to deep cobalt as clouds pass overhead. Pilgrims walk circuits around this lake, sometimes taking weeks to complete the journey. And they do it not as a tourist activity, but as a sacred act of devotion. Every step is a prayer. Every breath in that thin air is an offering. Speaking of devotion, let us dive into the spiritual heartbeat of Tibet, because this is where things get truly fascinating. Tibetan Buddhism is not just a religion practiced here. It is the architecture of daily life. The sound of prayer wheels spinning, the flutter of prayer flags releasing mantras into the wind, the deep resonant hum of monks chanting at dawn. These are not performances for visitors. This is just a morning in Tibet. The Potala Palace in Lhasa stands as one of the most iconic structures ever built by human hands. Rising 13 stories above the city, containing over 1,000 rooms, built primarily in the 17th century and sitting at an elevation that most airports cannot even match. It served for centuries as the winter residence of the Dalai Lama, Tibet's spiritual leader. Walking through its corridors, you feel time collapse. Generations of spiritual thought, artistic genius, and quiet devotion are embedded in every wall, every gilded statue, every ancient scroll stored within its chambers. Now here is an emotional layer to this story that deserves honest acknowledgement. Modern Tibet exists in a complicated political reality. Since the 1950s, the region has been under the governance of China, and this has profoundly shaped the lives of Tibetan people. Many traditions have been preserved, but many Tibetans living outside of Tibet, including the Dalai Lama, who has lived in exile in India since 1959, continue to advocate for greater cultural and religious autonomy. The resilience of Tibetan identity in the face of these pressures is itself one of the great human stories of the modern era. Culture, when it runs deep enough, finds ways to survive. Let us shift to something you probably have not thought about when it comes to Tibet. The food. Imagine sitting in a stone house with a yak wool blanket across your lap, cold wind howling outside, and a bowl of tsampa in your hands. Tsampa is roasted barley flour, one of the staple foods of Tibet. Mixed with butter tea and rolled into small balls, it is humble, filling, and deeply nourishing. And that butter tea deserves its own moment. Made from tea leaves, water, yak butter, and salt, it sounds unusual to outsiders, but in the high-altitude cold of Tibet, the calories and warmth it provides are genuinely life-sustaining. This is food that evolved alongside a people in a specific environment. It is culinary adaptation in the most beautiful sense. Yaks themselves are another wonder hiding in plain sight. These enormous shaggy animals are essentially the backbone of traditional Tibetan life. Their milk becomes butter and cheese. Their fiber becomes clothing and rope. Their dried dung becomes fuel for fires in a landscape where trees are scarce. Even their breath, believe it or not, contributes warmth to shared living spaces in traditional nomadic setups. The relationship between Tibetan nomads and their yaks is thousands of years old and as practical as it is profound. Let us pause here for a moment and just appreciate the scale of what Tibet means to the world beyond its borders. The Tibetan Plateau is sometimes called the third pole of the planet because it holds more freshwater ice than anywhere except Antarctica and the Arctic. The great rivers of Asia, including the Yangtze, the Yellow River, the Mekong, the Brahmaputra, and others, all originate on this plateau. When we talk about the water security of billions of people across South and Southeast Asia, we are talking about Tibet. The health of this plateau is not just a local or regional concern, it is a global one. Now, as we bring this journey toward its close, let me leave you with something that has stayed with me since I first started researching this incredible place. There is a concept in Tibetan thought called interdependence, the idea that nothing exists in isolation, that everything is connected to everything else. The glacier to the river to the farmer to the city to the world. Tibetan philosophy arrived at this understanding centuries before modern ecology and environmental science started using different words to say essentially the same thing. In a world that often feels fragmented and overwhelming, there is something genuinely healing about looking at a culture that built its entire worldview around connection, around the idea that your choices ripple outward, and that the mountain outside your window is not a resource to extract, but a relationship to honor. Tibet is a mirror, and when you look into it closely enough, you do not just see prayer flags and mountain peaks. You see a different way of being alive. You see people who chose depth over speed, meaning over convenience, and community over isolation. And you find yourself wondering, not just what Tibet can teach us about Tibet, but what Tibet can teach us about ourselves. If this opens something in you today, share it with someone who needs to feel wonder right now. The world has enough noise. Let us share something worth listening to.